I was eating the standard American diet. And then I transitioned and I started eating only animal meat and animal fat. And I removed all of the toxins and all of the processed foods. And I reduced the inflammation in my brain. And all of a sudden I had clarity and I was able to see clearly, and it removed the thoughts of suicide from me. And then I had hope to live. And now I can't wait. I can't wait to see what's going to happen tomorrow.
Hi, good to see you back on Growth Factor, my show. I'm Amalia. And next to me, you can see my friend Emily Penton. She has an incredible story. A few pretty harsh things happened to her, and she uses that experience to help you and to help others. So Emily, let's get right into it.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Well,
I actually had debilitating mental illness. I had bipolar disorder, and it literally ruled my life. It made all the decisions for me, and it it dictated who I thought I was. My identity was in bipolar disorder, and really everything that I experienced in my life was through that filter of that mental illness. Um, and it turned into rapid cycling in the fall of 2018. And with bipolar disorder, there's cycles. You have mania and then you have depression. And sometimes you can hang out in the middle, but most of the time it's mania or it's depression. And sometimes you get a break. Sometimes it's, year cycles. Sometimes it's month cycles. Rapid cycling for me turned into every day. It was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I didn't know who I was going to be when I woke up. And I would schedule the day and then I would have to reschedule the day if, I literally switched into a different person. And I was practicing as a therapist. And so that did not work out well. I had to quit working for 6 months and move in with my mom at the age of 40, which you don't expect. You don't expect to get your master's in clinical counseling and then all of a sudden you're living with your mom. But I found out about Carnivore, and I found out about other people who were able to resolve their symptoms of bipolar disorder. And all I needed was that hope that it was possible, that someone else was able to reduce the symptoms of bipolar disorder, because it was this big, vicious thing that wasn't getting any better. And at my most, I was on 900 milligrams of lithium, 80 milligrams of Prozac, 80 milligrams of Adderall just to get out of bed every day, and Ambien to sleep every night. And I still wasn't functioning. I wasn't killing myself and I wasn't in the psych ward, but I wasn't functioning. So on February 24th of 2019, I switched from the standard American diet, which was, for me, it was pizza and ramen noodles and cookies and cakes and all the things, donuts, soda, beer, alcohol, to basically half of my plate was meat and half of my plate was animal fat. A lot of ribeyes, a lot of bacon, breakfast sausage, chicken wings, fatty pork butt, ribs. That's what I ate. And that's all I ate. And then in April of 2019, I had my last manic or depressive episode. And then I was able to taper off of my psych meds. I went back to work full time in June of 2019, had my last psych med in September of 2019. So now what I do is I use this information and I help others along their journey to know that there's options, that there's other things that you can do along with medication. I never tell anybody to take away their medication, but to support yourself with animal fat.
I'm just speechless. That is such an incredible story because so many people struggle their entire life, or they watch their parents struggle their entire life. Their parents are now 70, 80, 90, and all they know is that cycle of the parents' behaviors. This is incredible. You're going to help so many people, Emily. Thank you. So my first question is for families who are unaware, which are most of us, can you tell us the red flags, the signs? So if our child is experiencing this, can you tell us who you were as a child and up through 40, all the red flags that your parents might have noticed or your spouse?
Yeah. I don't know the red flags that my parents could have seen. I knew intrinsically in me going back. Um, I I never fit in even with myself, if that makes any sense, because I was always this split person. I was 100% manic and I was 100% depressed,
Hmm.
and they both were Emily. And so I constantly felt like I wasn't my true authentic self. Like when I was manic, I didn't feel right. When I was depressed, I didn't feel right. Like I never felt comfortable in my own skin, with who I really was. And the thing that find most characteristic is the negative self-talk. I was constantly talking about how worthless I was and how useless I was and how what a failure I was. Even whenever I would have any kind of success, it was never enough. I always had I was inundated with lies that I was not a good person and I was not smart. I was not, good to have around. I'm not a good friend. I'm not a good daughter. I'm not a good sister. I'm not a good anything. And so that's what I see a lot of times with the clients that come to me, is that they are inundated with these, they're literally berated with these lies. So much so that it's reality to them. They don't see it as lies. They're like, no, that's the truth. No, that's really who I am. And it wasn't until I was able to take off the lenses of the bipolar disorder to see who I really am. And I'm really amazing. And I've been really amazing my whole life. I just had those bipolar glasses on and I saw everything through that filter. And so now I'm able to see who I really am. And it's really cool to watch my clients see that when all of a sudden they're like, hey, I'm really great. And I'm like, I know, I've been telling you that. They see it.
That's beautiful. So what was your education and what was your what was your practice? What did you do in your title?
My practice was, I had my master's in clinical counseling. And in the state of Missouri, they have, it's called LPC, Licensed Professional Counselor. And my specialty was children. I worked a lot in foster care, with children who had already been removed from the home. And then I worked with foster parents to offer therapy, play therapy mainly, for the children in their care. And then I also did a lot of family therapy for some of the children to have communication with their birth parents, and for the children to have communication with their foster parents, because it's a really difficult dynamic. And so that's mainly what I did. And I also worked in children's homes.
And what do you do now?
Now I just coach. I realized very quickly, whenever I had this healing for me and I was able to resolve my bipolar disorder, I would go and I would sit across from, because I did have a percentage of my clients were adults that had bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety. And I would sit across from them and I would feel like my hands were tied behind my back, because licensing board and the insurance panels do not want me talking about food. They do not want me talking about food. And I had to diagnose them upon the initial session. So I remember one time I had to diagnose a 2-year-old with generalized anxiety disorder so that I could even practice with him. And he needed it. Like he had been through some trauma. He needed the play therapy, but I couldn't work with him until I diagnosed him. And all of my treatment plans, there was no option for me to talk about food. And so I quickly realized that I don't fit in there anymore. And I said, you know what? I don't care. Take the letters away from the end of my name. Call me a coach. I don't care. I don't need a title. I just need to help people authentically and effectively. And I help more people now than I ever did in my practice. So it's worth it to me to be able to have real and authentic, and it's more ethical to me to actually be able to give results to people instead of just having them come week after week talking about the same thing like Groundhog Day and their problems don't go away. Now I talk to them and they literally transform before my eyes. And it's absolutely amazing because then they're empowered to do it themselves.
I want to ask you in a moment about your website and how people can reach out to you. But before that, I have two questions. One is, what nutrients do you teach your clients, your friends, your family, your neighbors that red meat have that plants don't? Now, I was assuming it was the taurine. You know, there's, I think, 20 amino acids, 9 of them are essential. We have to consume them. And plants don't have heme iron. Plants don't have enough B12. Plants don't have the creatine, carnosine, vitamin D3, DHA. So I'm trying to think of what else. And even the retinol, the vitamin K, is in plants, but you need to get it from meat as well, because based on everything I've studied as a nutritionist, I'm also a hypnotherapist. So I help people with their relaxation too, with the issues they're dealing with from lack of nutrients. That these nutrients basically are missing in plants. Even if, let's just say, there was a label on a piece of broccoli or kale or strawberry, and it says, you know, it has these particular ingredients. Let's just throw out, 2 grams of protein, let's say. It's based on everything I've studied. For example, Professor Don Layman at the University of Illinois saying not only do we have less nutrients in plants because of the farming methods, but it doesn't even have those nutrients because it comes out in the fiber. So so a vegan, a plant-based person might say, well, I just got 2 grams of protein from my beans and rice, but it really might be a quarter of a gram. Versus red meat, it's 95 to 100% bioavailable, and plants could be anywhere from 17 to maybe as much as 65% bioavailable. So we're not even getting, as a vegan, what we think we're getting. So what do you teach? What do you teach people? What are the vital nutrients in red meats that provide them with mental stability?
To be honest, whenever I went into this, I was so mentally ill that I couldn't understand all of the science. And most of the people that come to me are severely mentally ill, and they're not able to hear all of those words. It's too much. And what happens, we're already, it's almost like we're on sensory overload with bipolar disorder. And so whenever we hear all of the science and all of the words, we shut down and we go within, or we turn to drugs, or we turn to food, or we just want to stop the noise. And so I make it as simple as humanly possible. And I just tell people to try this for 30 to 45 days and to prioritize animal fat. And they can still eat, if they're dying for broccoli, they can still eat broccoli. That's fine. Just to prioritize the animal fat and to see, because when you're bipolar, it doesn't matter what the science says or what the literature says. All you need is relief in that moment. All you need is the results. And so that speaks louder than any words ever could. For a bipolar person to feel joy, for a bipolar person to feel calm, and to feel really who they really are, and to not focus on making it so complicated. I think it's really important to keep it very, very simple and to protect that. And so I'm very intentional about not talking about the science.
I've been curious. I haven't completely been able to confirm this. I know that eating read ruminant meats. Ruminant means the four stomachs. Does this help with schizophrenia? Because I know it helps with bipolar, depression, doom, paranoia, but I'm not sure about the schizophrenics. And my second part of this question is, if a child is newly diagnosed with schizophrenia versus someone 50, 60, 70 years old having schizophrenia their whole life, who does it help with?
100%. Yeah, I have actually an interview on my YouTube channel that, we'll talk about that later. And he was completely paranoid schizophrenic. License plates talked to him. Voices told him to, punch a nurse. Like he was constantly incarcerated, and he was a heroin addict. And so he was the worst of the worst scenario. When you hear his story, you're just like, how did you come back? And it was animal fat and animal meat.
Wow.
And he was able to get to that stability. And now he's a fully functioning member of society. He's one of my best friends.
Wow.
And yeah, he goes to the ocean. He lives in New Jersey, and he'll go to the ocean and in the morning to get the sunlight in his eyes, and he'll send me pictures of the morning sun on the beach. And he's like a fully functioning person, and he was literally a throwaway member of society. He was in psych wards. He was in prison. He was in addiction, and he's resolved all of that eating animal meat and animal fat. And it's been foundational. And the work of Chris Palmer is somebody who I really think everybody needs to pay attention to. His book, unfortunately, doesn't come out until November, but that's like right around the corner. And he goes into the science of, really addressing what he's found that works for his clients with schizophrenia.
What I so appreciate about, it's Dr. Chris Palmer, right?
Yes, Dr.
What
Chris
I really
Palmer.
appreciate about him is, number one, he was struggling himself with bipolar, maybe even dipping into schizophrenia. I don't remember, but I think he was in college. He started to lose his mind, and he has interviews of people with bipolar, not sure about schizophrenia, but they became homeless. They were doing drugs. They weren't acting properly. And two of his interviews, these people just by coincidence were eating meat and said, I finally had a clear thought. I wasn't having clear thoughts.
Yep.
So why, as a therapist and as a coach, why is it that once someone, I think it's typically, please correct me though, 18 to 22 males, they start to have these strange behaviors, call it bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, but why is it they typically do drugs? Why do they turn to drugs? I think it's marijuana, then it's heroin, meth. Why do they do this?
To stop the noises, to stop the voices, to numb themselves, because they're so overwhelmed with feeling, and they're literally tortured constantly. There's no escape. They don't even get escape in their sleep. Sometimes they have insomnia, and so the only way that they can have any peace is to do drugs, and to become an alcoholic. It is the neurotypical brain doesn't have any point of reference of the absolute torture that people with severe mental illness go through on a moment by moment basis. You don't get a break. You don't get a day off. You don't get an hour off. You are constantly tortured by these voices that are telling you lies. And so it makes sense that they turn to drugs. And that's why it's such a miracle whenever they're set free. And it's happening. It's happening over and over and over again.
So Emily, I was a vegan for a year, religious vegan. Then I was vegetarian, most of my life vegetarian. I'm 53 now. However, I thought what the government taught me, what my college, the public school system I went through, meat's going to cause you cancer. Meat's going to cause you colon issues, colon cancer. Meat is going to cause you heart disease. thanks to people like Nina Teicholz, I just read her book, The Big Fat Surprise. Dr. Sean Baker, The Carnivore Diet. I get to go on and on. Dr. Chris Palmer, I'm so looking forward to his book. They helped me realize, wow, everything's been flipped around. Meat is heart healthy. We need the fatty acids. That's what feed our hearts. But for my friends who are religious vegans, and I have quite a lot of them, I do see there's about 6 of them that have Crohn's disease. So maybe the veganism's helping them. Maybe they're cured of their Crohn's. I don't know, but I have found online people saying eating red meat gets rid of their Crohn's and other IBS issues. People like you getting rid of their bipolar. What I could do is I'm going to show right now, Genesis 9:3. I've never quoted biblically in my life. I feel like it makes people uncomfortable, so I don't like to do it. But I'm just going to say, for those of you who read your Torah, your Bible, it's just a historical book. It's like saying, read about the American Civil War. It's a book. It's history. So in that history, Genesis 9:3, it says that Adam and Eve, they were vegans. And then God, the light, Hashem, whatever you want to call that energy, said, now you can eat meat. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to work. We're supposed to work the fields, and we're supposed to eat meat. Adam and Eve didn't do that. So just want to throw that out there for those of you uncomfortable with that history. That is our human history. So I wanted to ask you, you had a really severe situation, and then I want to ask you, I'm going to show your website and how you help people. Can you tell us the really harsh parts of your life, why you had to move in with your mother and what was going on with your brain that you didn't want to be here?
Yeah, it was definitely just a negative self-worth. And I felt that I wasn't of any use to my family, that my family would be better off with me not there. And again, it's the lies that were just inundating me. And I felt it was very odd because up until that point, even with my bipolar cycles, until it turned into rapid cycling, I still would have extreme success with my clients. But I would only be on 3 days a week. So they didn't know that the other 2 days a week, I was in bed and I was incapacitated and I was unable to even pick up my phone. I was literally like paralyzed. And so for me, it was, when it turned into rapid cycling, it was just, I couldn't continue. And it was crazy to me whenever I first experienced joy for the first time. That was a foreign experience for me. And then I had hope for the future. And I hadn't had that. I had always had doom for the future and gloom, and it's always going to get worse and it's always going to be negative. And now I literally cannot have a bad day.
That's great.
I mean, it doesn't matter what people say to me, what my bank account says, what situationally is going on in my environment. I am Teflon and I am titanium. Like everything just slides right off of me. And I'm able to just continue to know who I really am and to see that truth. And that's what I love watching with my clients, is whenever they really see how valuable they really are.
You reminded me of last night. I met Joseph Alexander. He's 100 years old. He's a Holocaust survivor. When he was showing me pictures, I said, "Where's pictures of your family?" He said, I don't have any family left. I have no family photos. So the reason I'm mentioning him is his girlfriend, they've been dating 23 years and his wife died probably about 30 years ago. She said he doesn't have bad days. He wakes up like this. He's built different. He doesn't hold, what's the word? Not regret.
Grudges.
Grudges. Resentment. He doesn't have resentment. Excuse me. He doesn't have resentment. I couldn't believe that because I have resentment. I want to be like him, and he's been through so much. He faced Mengele.
Wow.
Mengele's the one that said, go left or go right. He told him to go left, and he lived, and his whole family was gone. He went back to Poland, and it wasn't good. Everyone's property. What he told me what happened was, if you go back to your property, typically you were killed because they took over your home.
Wow.
Want to give it back. So a lot of people in his town, close to 50 people were killed because they came back for their home and people didn't want to give their homes back. Can you imagine that? Humanity?
No, No.
The reason I'm mentioning him is I'm going to ask him what he eats because he's like you. He doesn't have a bad day. And I have to say the same for me. You mentioned the word doom, Emily. When I struggled for 2 years, it was through the virus, but it happened before the virus because I still had the mindset of vegetarian's best, meat is not healthy. And what I tell my clients now using nutrition, using hypnotherapy, listen, if you want to be vegan, great. I tell my kids too, because they have some pressure from friends. If your gut is fine, your mind is fine, your skin, your joints, if you're doing fine, then be vegan. But if you're not doing well, then you're sacrificing your family instead of sacrificing those animals. Because again, biblically, I know some people listening are not religious, but we have cow, sheep, and goat. And if you don't want them, if you don't want their protein, their meat, which was meant for you, then perhaps you're sacrificing yourself mentally, physically, or maybe your family. Because look at Emily, look at me. I don't have bad days either. And I have major challenges. We all do. I know you listening right now, you're struggling with your sibling, your neighbor, your spouse, maybe your ex, financially, your boss. We all have struggles. Nobody's alone in this. And I want to tell you listening, you are not a genetic defect. You don't have to have Crohn's, bipolar. And now I'm learning from Emily, schizophrenia. You can eat the proper nutrition, and most likely you can't get it from a pill. Most likely you can't supplement enough to get the heme iron that plants don't have, the amino acids that the plants don't have, the vitamins and minerals that we're not getting from plants. A lot of us need to get animal meat to be stable for our gut, our mind, our skin, our joints. So I also want to ask you, how do you help people and talk about your website? How can we reach out to you? How do you support people?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is just to go to emilypenton.com, and it's Penton, just like a pen that weighs a ton. And then everything's there. The way to start is to get a clarity call with me, because I don't know where you're at until we talk. And then we can find out where you're at and where you want to go. And that is the best way for us to move forward. Because I don't work with anybody that I don't know that I can help. And then I also have a free Saturday food support group. And that is every Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Time. So that would be 9 a.m. Pacific, and that's noon Eastern Time. And we record these and we put them up on YouTube. And so you can see what a meeting is like and experience it for yourself, or you can get that Zoom link and you can come in the meeting yourself, raise your hand, ask me a question.
Can you see the website? Is it up for you?
Yeah, I can see it.
I love, because I say you're not a genetic defect. You say you're not broken, you're brilliant. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it came to me like as I kept working with client after client after client, they would come to me and they would think they were broken. And I'd be like, no, you're brilliant. Like, look at this and look at this and look at that. And so it just became something I kept saying. And so I was like, you're not broken, you're brilliant.
What's your YouTube channel?
It's Emily Penton, Inner Clarity System.
Beautiful. I love that. Okay. So are you comfortable sharing the story about, I don't know if we could say the S word.
I really didn't see any other point in living. I was suicidal. I imagined that it would be much better for my family if I just wasn't here. It would be better for the world if I wasn't here. And then at that time, I was eating the standard American diet. And then I transitioned and I started eating only animal meat and animal fat. And I reduced the inflammation in my brain. And all of a sudden I had clarity and I was able to see clearly, and it removed the thoughts of suicide from me. And then I had hope to live. And now I can't wait. I can't wait to see what's going to happen tomorrow. And so animal meat and animal fat has resolved all of my depression and anxiety.
I love that. That's so incredible. So just to summarize, your diagnosis was bipolar. Was it anything else? You wanted to take your life and you were a therapist. Is there any other diagnosis you had, and what physical and mental issues were resolved? For example, did you have gut issues, skin issues? What were the other benefits of starting to eat red meats and its fats?
Yeah, actually very quickly into eating this way, I was hospitalized, and I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
And so a logical person would say, "Oh my gosh, I started this all meat diet, and now I can't walk without a walker and a cane, and I had delayed and slurred speech." And my initial diagnosis of why they admitted me into the hospital was because I had acute dysphagia, which meant that literally my throat would not swallow.
Mm.
And so it stopped swallowing water. They did some mechanical testing. It was not mechanical, it was neurological.
Whoa.
I had lesions on my left temporal lobe that literally shut down my ability to swallow. And I couldn't use my hands and my legs properly. I didn't have muscle control. And like I said, a logical person would be like, "Oh, I need to stop this all meat diet." But there was a knowing inside of me. And I knew that just like the animal meat and fat was going to resolve my bipolar disorder, I knew that it was going to improve my multiple sclerosis. So they did the lumbar puncture, they did multiple MRIs, and I was diagnosed. And I unfortunately or fortunately refused their medication. They wanted me to inject myself with the medication for MS. And I said, nope. I said, "You guys are here to monitor my MS. I'm going to treat it." And I treated it with ribeyes and bacon and chicken wings and ribs. And I ate animal meat and animal fat. And my last MS symptom was May 9th of 2019. I've had 6 MRIs. My very last MRI showed no new MS activity. I've had no symptoms ever since.
Incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, okay, let me make sure I understand all your diagnosis. You had a bipolar diagnosis, you had an MS diagnosis. Did you have any gut diagnosis or gut issues? Did you have any Crohn's, IBS, IBD, any problems in the bathroom?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't have any diagnosis of that. But I always had, just random problems with pooping, either one extreme or the other. Either it was too loose or I was constipated. So nothing was ever normal or regular. I was never regular. And everything always just irritated my stomach until I ate animal meat and animal fat.
I want to get into a little bit more of the nutrition, let's just call it technology, because I think a lot of us in the 80s and 90s were really brainwashed. I was vegan because, Emily, I read the book by, I think his name's John Robbins, Diet for a New America. His family was 31 flavors. They were a big dairy family. He even said he had an ice cream shaped pool. And of course, teenagers, as they do, or get into their 20s, they reject their parents because they have to fly the coop and become independent. So he became very vegan. So I was vegan because of him. And eventually I couldn't volunteer for the Red Cross. I was low in iron. So I had to remember, okay, I think I'm going to be a vegetarian, but I have to eat meat sometimes because I want to give my blood. You can save up to 3 lives. And I just couldn't do it with the fruits and vegetables. So I would eat meat, give my blood, and then I would be good for 60 to 90 days. But a lot of people don't realize, even when people talk about fatty liver, we think, oh, don't eat fat, don't eat animal meat because you can get fatty liver. But that's an issue with triglycerides. I listened to, you all might want to find him, Professor Don Layman from University of Illinois. He's a biochemical nutritionist, and he's actually one of the people that helped bring back eggs. Because remember, we thought, don't eat the yellow, maybe don't even eggs at all. Okay, now you can eat the white. Okay, now you can eat eggs. So he was one of the people that helped with that. But basically what we've learned is fatty acids are not toxic, but glucose is. And we call it diabetes, right? So we're learning now that fat is fine. But what a lot of people don't know that I learned from this professor is that when you eat carbohydrates, you have to get rid of it within 2 hours. Or what's it doing to your body? It's either turning into fat or it's changing the chemicals in your brain and causing mental health issues, or your gut causing gut issues, or your joints with arthritis and so much more. So it's just amazing how what we learned in even up till the 2000s is just wrong. And there's so many books out there, so much literature, but the plant-based vegans are not willing to look. And I feel thankful that I'm able to teach my kids, listen, like I said, you want to be vegan, try it. But if there's anything going on, you are not a defect. You have to look at what you're putting in your body. I mean, people are aware you have supplements, you have vitamins. You're aware that you buy that to increase your health, but people don't think as much that you can ingest that using foods. What else do you teach your clients nutritionally? Or is there anything, once they're able to listen to you and they're stable, what do you say to them? Do you talk about raw meats and how to eat it?
No, that's my personal, journey that I've taken. I just naturally started, really being more gravitated to my meat being cooked more and more rare. I suggest that people go to do their own, but yeah, it's really important. If you do you can go to emilypenton.com and find this, because it's not something that you should flippantly or easily do. You really need to make sure that you go and find a local farmer or butcher and that you get good meat. I would not ever suggest anyone eat raw out of the grocery store. I've been eating raw beef and beef fat for 3 years now, and I'm thriving on it. But it's not for everybody. I have found, though, for me personally, that my body does not properly absorb protein and fat. And so my body's just trying to get to the best, quickest, route to those nutrients. And so my body requests it raw. But for my clients, I ask them to all start where they're at, and to eat the food that their bodies are telling them to eat, with the exception of Doritos and ramen noodles and, soda, like the obvious things that they know their body shouldn't eat. But whenever they feel good after they eat something, to take note of that. And I don't teach people to listen to me. I teach them to listen to themselves. And they get a little frustrated with me the first week because they want me to give them a food plan. And I don't. Because I feel that it's important, that it's unethical for me to have somebody just depend on me. Then you're going to have a food plan for me for every month for the rest of your life. You need to know that the power is within you to write your own food plan and to decide what foods are best for you. But it's just better to do like an experiment and to really navigate what foods and are having what effects on you.
That's great. Yeah, that's good. Especially because I know people just want to robotically listen to their therapists, eat the foods that they say, but it's so much better to go on a journey. And I want to ask you about that journey. So when you changed your food, you said you got a multiple sclerosis diagnosis. So what do you tell people in general? Is there when you change what you're eating, is there a certain time frame, wait 45 days? How does it cycle through the system? And I'm assuming it has to do with the gut microbiome, that you're changing the bugs that are in your body, because I do know people say, oh, red meat doesn't agree with me. It hurts my stomach. And I'm thinking, a neighbor just said it to me and I didn't say anything to her, but I want to say, you got to change your gut microbiome. You got to get used to it. You're eating so many carbs and you have a different flora in your gut right now.
Yeah. And that's why I have people work with me, because it's scary going through the transition. And so I tell them to do an experiment for 45 days. And usually by the time they hit about 40 days, they're just like, oh my gosh, I feel so good. And you don't know what good feels like until you feel good. And you have no point of reference especially whenever you're severely mentally ill, you have no point of reference of experiencing joy and stability and hope. And so that's pretty much how I suggest, is that people just do their own experiment. And then, it doesn't matter what Dr. So-and-so says, or this book or this scientific journal article, what works for your body.
And I've heard from others. Everyone knows Joe Rogan talked about the carnivore diet. Jordan Peterson, it stopped his depression. His daughter, Michaela Peterson, had gut issues, arthritis, and they both went to steak. and all of their issues resolved. So we all know those three famous people, but what a lot of us don't know is we don't think about, it's so interesting. We listen to the government a lot. We listen to the TV a lot. And the phrase I started realizing over the last 2 years is that fear shuts down the critical thinking part of the brain. And I had that too. So when I put everything together, now I realize, wait a second, if you look at American Indians, if you look at the Inuit in the Canadian area, you look at the Maasai tribe, which my family's actually visited them. So we've seen this with our own eyes. We have some of the Maasai tribe gifts in our house. When we look at tribes around the world, usually they're living in way too extreme heat, way too extreme cold, like the Eskimos in Alaska. They don't have fruits and vegetables. That's a pretty new westernized thing, that it's cool to be plant-based and vegan, be kind to animals. But these tribes are eating animals. And not only that, they give, even us carnivores sometimes are only eating the non-fatty muscle meat. And these tribes are eating the fat. They eat the fat behind the eyeballs. They eat the liver. They eat all kinds of organs. And what do they have traditionally? They don't have diabetes. They don't have, I was going to say dental caries. I forgot the word, but cavities. They don't have depression, and they're not having arthritis and cancers. They're living a long life. And we all know this naturally, but somehow we're relying on what we learned in the public school system, in the college system. We're not being taught just reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're being taught how to eat, weird cultural things. So I think what I'm learning from you, Emily, is, like you just said, listen to your intuition, listen to your own innate knowledge. But I do think what I really appreciate you just said is waiting that 45 days, because changing, like Joe Rogan said, in the bathroom, there was like black stuff coming out for a week or two. So if you're very plant-based or very vegan, your gut microbiome is going to change and need some time. So I really appreciate hearing that it takes 45 days.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes longer. We don't know how sick you are. We have no idea what's going on. And doctors may think they know. They do blood tests, they do urine tests, they do stools tests, they do hair samples, but nobody knows what's going on the inside of our bodies. And so that's why, God literally gave us a knower. He gave us this sense of being able to navigate this. And we need to follow that intuition, and we need to follow that direction to find out what foods are best for us, and to follow the results whenever you do eat foods and you start to experience that joy and that peace.
I do recommend that you look up, I'm talking to everyone listening right now, my friend, Dr. Sabine, Sabine Hazan, Hazan, or Hazen. She was interviewed over the last 2.5 years. She's incredible. She looked at the gut microbiome for this virus, and I was in her study. It was a 3-month study. You got either placebo or the hydroxychloroquine. And she basically is on many, many famous shows that people were following, because you can either look at the TV or you can follow your own sources, like on YouTube, on Rumble, on Telegram, on WhatsApp. And so she was explaining what's going on in the gut. And what we basically learn is you can take that fecal matter and see what's in it. So I'm sure one day there's going to be a test, and who knows, she might already have it, to see what kind of flora you have in there and what you need. And she's the one who taught me about bifidobacterium. That's one of the number one gut microbiomes that has to do with immunity. So she was learning who wasn't getting COVID as strong, or who didn't even get it in the first year. Like for me, I'm O blood, O positive, and CMV negative. I was never exposed to that virus. And I didn't get the virus when my entire family had it except one son, and I have 4 kids. So the gut microbiome is really, really important. And she taught us a lot. So I'll link her right here, Dr. Sabine Hazan. She's in California. But is there anything else you want to teach us? Maybe share a story, a miracle story about one of your clients changing how they eat and how that transformed them, or anything in general you wanted to comment on?
Yeah, I think a really interesting one was a 18-year-old boy who his mother brought him to me. He was having severe panic attacks to the point where it was interfering with his, he was in a freshman of college. and it was interfering with his work. Like he would be on the way to work and he would have to pull over on the side of the highway, have the panic attack for 15, 20 minutes, and then get back on the highway, go to work, go to school. And it was just debilitating. And so I talked to him about what he ate, and he was addicted to granola bars. He had a box of granola bars in his truck all the time. He had granola bars at home in the pantry. He would just, that was his go-to. That was what he would eat all the time, was these granola bars. And I said, are you willing to try? And he was just like, I will try anything. I am 18 years old and this is ruining my life. And I said, okay, let's try this. And so he started eating eggs, and he started eating burgers. He started eating bacon. He started eating chicken wings, cheese, milk, yogurt, everything except for granola bars. And I'm pretty sure he went ahead and removed any vegetables or fruit for the experiment for the 45 days. And they went away. They went away. And he was just like, this is crazy. I can't believe this happened. And I'm just like, I'm so sorry that you love granola bars so much, but that was literally like causing the problems in his gut that were causing the problems in his brain to like have his whole central nervous system just erupt. And it was really that simple. So I really commend his mom for going a different route, and for reaching out to me and for hiring me to help him. And I commend him for being 18 and listening to me and trying it. And now he's, I believe he's in his sophomore, finished up his sophomore year of college, and he's knocking it out of the park.
We were just so duped. We were so duped. If you read these books, it started with Ansel Keys. He influenced the government. He was friendly with President Eisenhower's doctor. President Eisenhower had a heart attack in the 1950s when people didn't really hear about heart disease and heart attacks. So really, everything's the opposite. And it's reminding me, I interviewed Sameer Dosani, Sameer, Dosani, Dossani. So you could see him on my show, and he's going to be on again to talk about his vitiligo. Vitiligo, most people know, is the Michael Jackson disease where your skin turns white. And he had patches everywhere. Once he started going carnivore, his vitiligo started to fade away. He can barely find it. He also credits eating raw eggs. He felt the more raw eggs he's eating, the vitiligo would melt away. So I was just so excited to hear that. And we're going to do another interview to get into detail on that, because eating red meat and eggs just changed his life. He has a lot of autoimmune in his family. So while I think that a lot of things are genetic, like Crohn's and bipolar and a whole host of other things, even certain cancers, it seems that we might have that genetic propensity, but if we just stick to foods that are powerful for our system, which are the red meats, then it seems like we can reverse a lot of disease. And I want to ask you actually about pig, because since pig is very biblical and it's in the Torah, it's in the Bible, we're really not supposed to eat pig. So I want to ask you that in a moment. Now, when I was reading a book by Dr. Rashid Buttar, he was explaining that pigs, this is why they're used in the medical field. A lot of doctors study pigs. They practice their colonoscopy on that. I think pig hearts were being used for transplant patients, if I'm saying that correctly, because pigs are on the inside 85% similar to humans. And so it's almost like being a cannibal when you eat pig. So based on everything I've learned, it's really not pig, it's not turkey, it's not chicken, it's mostly the red meat. So I wanted to know, what do you think about pork? Because beef has bacon. You can get beef bacon at the store. Sheep has bacon. You can get lamb bacon, because biblically we're supposed to have animals that have a split hoof and chew their cud. Those are the biblical animals that this higher power, God, biblically said to eat, not pig. So what do you think about pork?
Yeah, all I can tell you is my experience. And my experience is that whenever I eat pork or bacon, I just don't feel as good.
I
And
didn't think you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say you like pork.
no,
Interesting. Wow, you're
no.
another person saying that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's red meat for me all the way.
Yeah.
And it's beef. I have tried lamb, and I do feel well on lamb. But I'm in Southeast Missouri, and beef, and specifically regenerative grass-fed, grass-finished beef, has been what has given me the ability to thrive. And I just don't feel right. I feel off when I eat pork and when I eat bacon, or pork chops, or, pork ribs. I just don't feel great. And I feel fantastic anytime I eat beef, and beef fat, specifically fatty beef, is when that's just my sweet spot. That's when I feel amazing. I don't feel well when I eat chicken. I feel that if I were to get maybe a better source of chicken, I might do better. But the chicken out of the grocery store, whenever I would eat that, I would get emotional. Like, I would get really irritable. And just, it just affected me. So I don't know if it was the hormones that was it was literally just the grocery store, stuff. I haven't ventured out to find a good farm. But I put all of my effort in finding a good beef farmer. And I did, and that's where I feel best.
And I did show your page that you made on the how to eat raw beef, how to find the right farmers. So I'll include everything that you need to find on Emily in the description. And, what I'm realizing, learning from you, learning from all the books I read and talking to other people, it does seem like, okay, fine, you want to eat turkey and chicken, go for it. Maybe it's healing for you. But generally, pig, turkey, chicken, traditionally, that was not being eaten. People would eat the eggs from these animals, but maybe it was 100 years ago, I don't know, 200 years ago, people weren't grabbing the birds on the ground and then cooking them and eating them. They were eating the red meats, and then they were eating the eggs from these animals. So I appreciate what you I was really shocked. I thought you were going to say you love pork, and I can't believe you're just another person saying pork doesn't work. And that is biblical. It's amazing how when you go back to that original book, it seems to be true, prove it true over and over and over.
Yeah, yeah. And all I have is my experience, and I've gotten really good at being in tune with my body and with my emotions. And I just don't feel right eating anything besides beef and beef fat.
There was a woman on Dr. Saladino's show. I don't remember her name. And she's some sort of PhD, I think, doctor. Her story was when she was young, I think she was around 17, she traveled to another country to help out this country, and it was a deserted island. And she got very sick. They later realized it was the chicken poop in the water. And so she was living at home for, I think, quite a few years, couldn't get out of bed. And what started to heal her was chicken soup. That started the healing. But the healing didn't happen until she had the red meat. So it made me realize, I learned from everyone. That's why my shows starts out with all these faces, because everyone I interview, we're all a part of that higher power about God being on this earth and learning from each other. So I learned from her that maybe chicken's not the greatest thing, because it didn't fully heal her. It did start her healing, but it didn't fully heal her. So that's why I just keep being reminded over and over, it's red meat, not the turkey, not the chicken, not the pig. Any other animals you think we should cut out that I'm not thinking about that a lot of people typically eat?
No, I mean, I personally don't react really well to some like canned like sardines. I really wish I could. I really wish, because I'm in Missouri, so I'm landlocked. So I don't have any like fresh fish. But I can get like the, wild caught frozen stuff. And I do feel pretty well whenever I eat like salmon,
Okay.
especially with the skin on. But again, I just always go back to it. It's funny because I'll try other foods, other meats, and I just crave that beef and beef fat. That's my happy spot.
Well, if there's anything else you'd like to say, I just want to start by summarizing. You're looking at Emily. She helps so many people because she had experience. So she's a researcher. She's basically a doctor of nutrition, because she realized eating a certain way can really cause mental health issues. I mean, she wanted to take her own life. She had to move back in with her mother. And to see her say every day is joyful, and I feel the same way, to go from doom every day, not wanting to get out of bed, and feeling as good as I do, nothing can stop me. I feel good. I have challenges like everyone does, but eating that red meat is a superfood, and I'm not willing to sacrifice my family, my health anymore.
I'm so grateful. I really think that what you're doing here is a mighty mission. And it's exciting to join forces with other people who really understand this, and to just present it in love, and wait until people have eyes to see and ears to hear. But thank you so much for delivering this and serving our community to bring this information.
And thank you, Emily. And thank you, everyone, for being here on Growth Factor.